Hello everyone, welcome to our 9th presentation on Blog Talk Radio. We have an international audience at this time and we thank you for your interest. We refer to our efforts as Musings with Steve and Teresa, and we'll welcome your opinions during our discussion. I'm Steve, the co-host.
And I'm Teresa, the other co-host.
We're here to enlighten, entertain, and inform about issues we think are important. We want people to think about how positive actions make positive people.
Anyone wanting to join our discussion today can call us at 347-308-8409. You'll be next in line. Again, that number is 347-308-8409. Come on, give us a call. We'd love to hear from you.
All right. We are continuing our efforts to entertain and amuse you by presenting our view of ancestor tales. Some stories are true, some are fiction, and some are just jokes. So join us, share as we present selected stories about some older people who just might resemble some of our neighbors and families. We begin our trip with my past. I call it the hour.
The horn.
The horn. So in the middle 1950s, the United States government contracted to build a gaseous diffusion facility near Piketon, Ohio. The installation was to extract bomb-quality U-238 from uranium-235 ore. U-238 was used to make atomic bombs, of course. Everyone called the plant the A plant. The Cold War was in full bloom. Security was loudly trumpeted, and the word was, we got to keep them Russian spies out. 50,000 workers came to do the job. The engineers, security people, supervisors, foremen, the equipment operators, welders, pipe fitters all came. Also came the craftsmen and craftswomen of every trade, 50,000 strong, and their families. They came to the lower side of the valley, which had a population of about 80,000 people when you count everyone in a radius of 30 miles around the plant. Since the A plant was about halfway between Piketon and Portsmouth, all cities and nearby towns suffered an influx of strangers. Living space was at a premium. Schools were jammed. Roads were full and slow. Trailer parks sprang up all over the place. We had boomtown conditions and boomtown problems. The Scioto County Sheriff and the Portsmouth Chief of Police issued a joint statement saying that no organized crime existed in their jurisdiction, and they were correct. A mob-connected Youngstown organization was refused entry to the valley. The local people wanted no help from outsiders. The visiting enforcers were found unconscious along the towpath leading out of town. Crime was local and certainly not organized, but it was there. Wayne Clark was my father, and he lived in Portsmouth, Ohio all his life. He was usually straightforward and somewhat excitable, talked loudly as a result of that excitement. Most of us Clarks have had to learn to talk softly so as not to scare strangers. It must be contagious or something.
In the genes.
Dad was a good Christian man. He didn't talk much about it, but he was. Before he began to work nights so much, he was a faithful Sunday morning go-to-church guy. We all went. Father, mother, and 3 little boys. Of course, he had married a preacher's daughter, and no alternative to church-going had ever occurred to either of them. Dad had helped with the Cub Scouts since Mom was the then mother. He was an assistant scoutmaster for a couple of years when my brother and I were scouting. As I said, just a good family man. Now, we had inherited my grandfather Bond's old automobile, a 1937 Hudson Terraplane. It had an inline big-bore 6-cylinder engine, 4-on-the-floor stick shift and clutch. This design was ahead of its time, quite superior to other engines. The inline big-bore engine continued to be used by winning stock car builders until the mid-50s. It was replaced when the overhead valve design was perfected. It was the era of the Hudson Hornet racers, and as shown in the animated movie Cars, Doc Hudson's era was real. Grandfather had purchased this new 1937 Hudson Terraplane for $800. He drove it for the next 280,000 miles. World War II military demands had stopped automobile manufacture at the end of 1941 and did not resume production until 1946. Even though parts were hard to get, my grandfather's Hudson engine had been rebuilt 2 or 3 times. Grandfather was a supervisor for the telephone company, and he had an essential needs Class B gasoline rationing card. He drove from Portsmouth telephone office to the Coshocton and Circleville offices weekly. He was entitled to a company car, but it wasn't a Hudson, and he got mileage allowance too. As I said, we inherited the 37 Hudson when Grandfather purchased a 1947 Chevy. Cars were in very great demand after the war, both new and used. Everyone was trying to replace old vehicles. Returning war veterans also wanted cars. Waiting lists for new cars were long. Grandfather couldn't wait. The Chevy was nice, but it wasn't a Hudson. Now, I drive that old Hudson and got it up to 88 miles an hour, and it went right up the floodwall levee, just like the Jeep. Not bad for 280,000 miles, but the car was tired, and things were worn. We had difficulty getting replacement parts, but we drove it, and we loved that old Hudson. And now to our story. Mother was working at Montgomery Ward's until 9 p.m. My father was to pick her up with the Hudson at the Gallia Street Esplanade. Now, the Esplanade was the remains of a farmer's market that was converted into a traffic oval. One could circle the oval by turning left, going down a block, then left again around the Esplanade. The A-plant crowds were out. Traffic was crazy. People were walking everywhere. And the ladies of the night were working the Esplanade. It was a true marketplace. The wiring in the Hudson steering column had shorted the previous week, causing the horn to sound when you turned left. My brother and I had worked on it for more than an hour, taping the bared wires, and it worked for a while. The tape failed as my father slowly drove around the Gallia Street Esplanade. The horn went beep, beep, beep. The passenger door opened, and a strange lady slipped into the seat. Dad was trying to drive the car in all the traffic, banged the steering column to unstick the horn, convinced this lady that he had not beeped at her, that he wasn't a customer, and would she please get out before his wife got there. She got out. Dad turned left. The horn beep, beep, beeped. The door opened, and another strange passenger entered. By the time my mother arrived, Dad had had 3 ladies of the night for passengers, was a jittery mess, and he almost asked my mother to drive home, but he didn't.
Did Grandma ever find out about what exactly happened?
Oh yes, but not right then.
That was a good story. I always liked that story. Thank you so much. Now I have an interesting one here about Julie Andrews doing a concert for AARP. She actually sang one of her favorite songs, with a few word changes to fit the art theme. Here's the new words. Hope you don't mind. Maylocks and nose drops and needles for knitting, walkers and handrails and new dental fittings, bundles of magazines tied up in string. These are a few of my favorite things. Cadillacs and cataracts, hearing aids and glasses, Polydent and Fixident and false teeth in glasses, pacemaker, golf carts and porches with swings. These are a few of my favorite things. When the pipes leak, when the bones creak, when the knees go bad, I simply remember my favorite things, and then I don't feel so bad.
Great, Terry. I think I need to make that my theme song. Another, the senility prayer. God grant me the senility to forget the people I never liked anyway, the good fortune to run into the ones I do, and the eyesight to tell the difference.
Yay.
There.
All I gotta do is take off my glasses. That's not a problem. Yeah. Well, I got an example here of a son's love and how you can help your parents out no matter where you are. It's called Where There's a Will, There's a Way. An old Italian man lived alone in the country. He wanted to dig his tomato garden, but it was very hard work as the ground was hard. His only son, Vincent, who used to help him, was in prison. The old man wrote a letter to his son and described his predicament. Dear Vincent, I am feeling pretty bad because it looks like I won't be able to plant my tomato garden this year. I'm just getting too old to be digging up a garden plot. I know if you were here, my troubles would be over. I know you would be happy to dig the plot for me. Love, Dad. A few days later, Dad received a letter from Vinny. Dear Dad, don't dig up that garden. That's where I buried the bodies. Love, Vinny. At 4 a.m. the next morning, FBI agents and the local police arrived and dug up the entire area without finding any bodies. They apologized to the old man and left. The next day, the old man received another letter from his son. It said, Dear Dad, go ahead and plant the tomatoes now. That's the best I could do under the circumstances. Love you, Vinny.
Hey, that was great, Terry. Really appreciated that. Well, we've got another story here. It says, I'm getting older now, and I can't tolerate the cold like I used to. So last year, my wife and I replaced all the windows in my house with those fancy double energy efficient kind. Got a nice tax break, too. Anyway, today I got a call from the contractor who installed them. He was complaining that the work had been completed a whole year ago and I still hadn't paid for them. So I told him just what that fast-talking sales guy Harold had told me last year when he installed them. And I quote, In 1 year, these windows will pay for themselves. It's been a year now, I told him. There was only silence at the other end of the line. So I hung up. Don't mess with us seniors.
Yeah, you told him, Pops. Here's one more. It's called Too Late for Marriage. A 95-year-old man announces to his entire family that he has decided to marry an 18-year-old woman and get on with his life, since his first wife had died a year ago. The family was shocked to hear this and tried to convince him in a pleasant manner that the marriage would not be a good idea. After hours of unsuccessful attempts by everybody to change his mind, his son confides to the rest of the family that a more direct approach must be used. He presents to his father the possibility that this marriage may end in death. After listening to the son, he remains quiet for about 10 minutes and says, Well, if she dies, she dies.
Hey, way to go. Well, here's a story. I'm really concerned about my elderly parents who are living in Michigan. I just got off the phone with my father, who's up north right now at his little cottage. He said that the snow was nearly waist high. The temperature was minus 10 degrees and the snow was still dropping. The wind was increasing to near gale force. Even the plows are having a hard time getting around and some trees are down too. The roads are closed and the alerts are on all the TV and radio stations urging people to stay off the highway. He said my mom had done nothing but look through the window for hours on end, just staring. He said he's concerned that if it gets much worse, he may have to let her in. In summary, today, we did not attempt to educate or inform you. We merely tried to amuse you. We hope that we were successful and our show was entertaining. Our mission on these Blog Talk radio presentations is to stimulate your thinking, prod your mind into new channels, pump up the interest in life, and rebuild your enthusiasm. Whether you're pro or con, we insist that you join us as we
investigate,
evaluate,
and participate.
Be part of the solution, not part of the problem. We want to thank you for listening to our broadcast today. We'll return with our continuing viewpoints next Tuesday at 2 p.m., February the 14th. Valentine's Day. Good and bad.
I'm Teresa.
And I'm Steve. Thank you for listening. Think positive.
Be positive.
Live positive. Enjoy.
Thanks for listening and watching. We appreciate it.
Goodbye.
10 seconds.
Cheeseburger.